Hello and welcome to another episode of the Uncommon Energy Podcast. On this week's episode, we're going to be talking about a certain top senior player who many of you are familiar with, who was recently banned from Pokemon TCG competitive play. We will talk about the results from the Malaysia Championship that took place this past weekend. Azul streamed it over on his channel throughout the weekend, so we'll get the results about what went down. We will, of course, have Guess That Flavor Text, everyone's favorite segment of the podcast. We all know it. And then the biggest thing, for sure, without a doubt, to talk about this week is the new season information. So much discussion has gone on online about this topic. Worlds is looking a lot different next year moving forward. The way tournaments are working next year look a lot different moving forward. All that and more on this week's episode. And then, of course, we will have our bonus episode over exclusively on our Patreon. If you want to get a little bit more from us, patreon.com/Uncommon Energy Podcast. My name is Chip Ritchie, joined here as always. Well, not in my normal place, but, joined as always by Azul GG. What's up, Azul? How we doing, buddy?
Doing pretty good, Chip. Had a good week of content once again. Streamed, the Malaysia Championships. I went a little bit late. I was up to like 3 a.m. yesterday. I was getting a little bit tired, but it was fun to watch some more action or like re-streams another major tournament. I don't do that as much as I would like to do. And I think the last major tournament now, at first I thought it was none, and then there was a couple over in Asia, and then I think there's one final major tournament in China before Worlds. Still. Okay. So, but yeah, it's a good week as always. Not too much going on. Nothing crazy. How about you? How's your vacation treating you so far?
It's good. Yeah, we're having a good time, relaxing. Kind of. I say relaxing, but typically when we go on vacations and stuff, we do kind of try to cram a lot in, make sure we see everything that we want to see when we're traveling and stuff like that. So we've been walking our fair share the last couple of days, running all over the place, but having a good time all the same. And it's been nice to just get away. And it's our first super long trip without the baby. He's staying home with grandparents and stuff like that. So it's been nice. He's been having a great time. They were sending us pictures and videos of him. And we were a little worried he was going to be having a hard time with us not being there, but he's he could care less. Honestly, he doesn't care about us. He's having a great time at grandma and granddad's. We try to FaceTime him at night every night before bed, and he's just not even interested in talking to us. He's trying to hang out with grandma and grandpa. So but yeah, it's all good. Been a good week other than that. Yeah, pretty crazy stuff happening this week in the Pokemon world, though. A lot has gone down since our last episode.
Yeah, I think we jump right into it. The ban of Gabriel Fernandez, by far the best player in the seniors division. I don't even think it's this is one. I feel you can't really say this that often. It's not even remotely close. I feel for who is the best senior player in the game right now in the seniors division. Definitely Gabriel, and there was a DQ. He was DQ'd at NAIC in. I think it was the win-in round, I believe.
Yeah.
In the win-in round. And just 2 days ago now, there was a tweet put out, kind of letting people know that he was banned. And I believe he replied to this tweet somewhere. And I got to pull I forgot. I set up the overlays completely. Usually Chip does the recording, but I'm doing the recording this time. And I just
I'm away.
Yeah, and I forgot to set up the actual browser so people can actually see what we're seeing, but I've got it now, so it's all set up. So now they can see
on the fly. Here we are. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Pokemon ban list is not public, but usually when something like this happens, when a really notable person is banned, word kind of spreads.
It's also, but
oftentimes someone will tweet it out or whatever.
To get access to it, you literally just have to be a professor, right?
I believe you might have to be I think you have to be an organizer.
Okay. So yeah, literally anyone who can organize a challenge or a cup has access to the ban list. So it's not private at all. Whenever anyone gets banned,
it's just not public.
Yeah, it's just not public, but it's not actually private either. Which
Well, I'm pretty sure you're not. If you
Well, no, yeah, you're not supposed to.
You're not. I'm pretty sure there is a thing where it's when you agree to be an organizer, you agree to not disclose information you're
Yeah.
provided, and one of those things is the ban list.
Yeah, and
So, but news like spreads, right?
Yeah, no one actually leaks the ban list, but as soon as someone's banned, everybody knows about it. There's no, which begs the question: why is it even private at this point? Which is like something
I'll also
I
say
think.
too. Something else people probably don't realize is that people do get banned like decently regularly. Like, there's probably a new person added to the ban list like every couple weeks. At least one person is added, and after like a tournament or something, I don't know. It happens more often than I think people realize.
Yeah.
But you just don't hear about it because it's not public, and then also like. It doesn't happen that often to a super notable player, which in this case, obviously, Gabriel is a super notable player, and it's not a. But yeah, you just want to go ahead and read the tweet, I guess.
Yeah. So tweet comes here from. I'm not even gonna try and pronounce the Twitter handle here, but and we wake up today with absolutely unfair and unfounded news. Today, June 28th, 2004. Wait, 2024. I'm sure.
Yes.
From the past.
It does say 2004.
Yeah. 2024. It was reported that at Gabriel's Twitter handle here was banned from Pokemon for 3 months, and the reason was not explained or clarified. Do they usually explain? That actually is my first question on that.
I think people usually receive a letter, I want to say, and it's possible that might still come, like a letter/email, I guess.
Or maybe he hasn't received his letter yet. Yeah.
But that I'm not 100% sure what the process looks like, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, 3 months.
And obviously this tweet was not put out by Gabriel, but I believe Gabriel is in the replies here somewhere. So that should basically confirm it, I feel like. Yeah, I mean, my statement last week was it last week or the week before on like the Noah situation, the Gabriel situation was like,
It was a couple weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah, I'm all for, and my stance hasn't changed on this either, just because Gabriel's banned. I'm all for just believing the player side of the story, because we're never getting another side of the story ever until TPCI proves or starts giving us other sides of the story. I'm all down to just believe the players. So in this situation, I was all for being like, hey, if Gabriel says what happened is what happened, I'm all for just to believe that, he didn't do anything wrong, and it sounds like he was unjustifiably DQ'd, which will always happen no matter what, which is like another thing to go with that. Like, there's like judges are always going to make mistakes. Like, if there's, we haven't seen the last of unjustified DQs and bans or whatever it might be. Well, hopefully not bans, but DQs. But by TPCI banning Gabriel, they definitely think that he cheated at NAIC, like, for sure, right? Like, otherwise they wouldn't have banned him. They could have, like, they can't really backtrack and be like, oh, we're going to undq you and you can go play around again because NAIC is already way past. But they could have been like, if they don't ban him, it almost feels like that's an admission of them being like, all right, maybe we did mess up here. And that's actually what I put forth recently, or I've been putting out there about the Noah situation, is like, I think if TPCI if they think Noah cheated, they would probably ban him. So if they don't ban him, I think TPCI is basically admitting that there was a mistake in the DQ of Noah at NAIC. I can't imagine they would DQ him for cheating and then not ban him post NAIC.
Yeah, especially with this happening specifically from the same tournament, right?
Yeah.
So the way the process works, for anyone who doesn't quite know, is like when someone is like, the judges who disqualify players are not the people who decide who gets like banned from Pokemon, right? So the judges will make their decision at the event, floor judges, head judges, all those things. And then after the tournament, a report is sent in to the Pokemon Company International, some division. I don't know exactly what it's called or what the name is, but the people who would this is like under their umbrella is like handling ineligible players. And they determine like what needs to be done, if anything needs to be done, right? So basically, based on whatever report was sent to the Pokemon Company International from the judges at an IC. And the ICs are also different because there's usually a little bit more, like compared to regionals, there's at the ICs a lot more of a TPCI presence, like more people who actually work at TPCI are at the tournaments compared to like just regionals and stuff like that. So maybe there's a little bit more involvement here where someone's kind of boots on the ground knowing exactly what went down. But at minimum, based on the information that was sent to them from the judge, they believed there was enough cause to ban Gabriel for this 3 months, which it is also interesting. It's a 3-month thing as well, compared to I feel like more often than not, when someone is banned, it is an indefinite ban. You don't often see like the 3-month, the 12-month or 6-month, any of those things like implemented. But in this case, it was 3 months. So basically, it's just Worlds, right? And maybe like the first
Yeah.
regionals in Brazil, more than likely. But
Yeah. So yeah, it basically, well, actually, I think that he literally gets unbanned the day before the first regional in Brazil.
okay,
But I guess like, can you register for the tournament if you're banned?
uh,
I think you actually can. I think you actually can, can't you? It's just when you show up, they're gonna tell you you're banned.
I have no clue.
I'm actually not sure because, like, yeah, well, I've seen people speculate that that's like why they banned him now, so he misses Worlds but can still play in time for the first tournament of next season. But I think that feels like, I mean, that feels like a weird thing to do if you're on TPCI's end. It's like either you just like when you come to the determination, you think you should be banned, you ban him, and then you kind of move on. But I don't know.
It definitely just feels. I mean, it's really hard to talk about this because it's like we just don't know, like we don't have all the details. We have one side of the story, and TPCI in the past has like the situation that happened with Rowan last year after he won in Hartford Regionals. They made a statement where they said that they had no reason to believe that anything like wrong was done on Rowan's part, right?
Yeah, but they banned his brother, right? Didn't his brother get a ban or something?
I don't know the details of all that. I don't remember for sure, but then yeah, I don't know. It's like they have things like that, which I think that was like a good thing. They said that was a good thing for Rowan's sake, definitely, right?
Yeah.
But then also just like clarity for the community as well, for people to kind of like say like, okay, this is what they have found based on what they did, what they researched, their findings. It's like why can we not have something similar, some similar level of like transparency or information given to us around these high profile disqualifications? Because this is even though Gabriel is a seniors division player, he's, like you said, undoubtedly the best seniors division player. He's been like he for all intents and purposes is a top player in the game, right?
Yeah,
even though he is just a senior. So it would just be nice to kind of have, if they came out and said, hey, this is the situation that we heard from an AIC, this is what our judges found, based on this we believe that this is the appropriate resolution, but we're probably not going to get that. And it's crazy too, because it's like we know of people who have cheated way worse, and then they never got banned or any of those things. Like people who've been disqualified from NAIC in the past, people who were disqualified from special events that you were live streaming and watching were never disqualified. Or sorry, they were disqualified, but they were never banned, right?
Yeah.
Part of me wonders if that has to do with like less of the, like I mentioned, the process, right, of judges having to submit to TPCI, hey, this was our findings at the tournament. Maybe less of that was happening at the time, so TPCI didn't make the appropriate action. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know for sure it was way worse, but the problem is we will never know because TPCI won't say anything. Yeah, I mean, for the other stuff, that's like what I kind of brought up, and I think for anyone who's like speculating, I don't have like, and this is the thing is, some people have like stuff against me because I don't think Noah cheated. I don't actually have anything against anyone who thinks Noah cheated. We have different opinions, and that's fine. I'm okay with this. I can live with that. I can live with you thinking Noah cheated. But I definitely have picked up a couple haters because I think Noah didn't cheat. But I would suggest going and watching the video on my YouTube channel where I watch the Eder situation unfold. And so you can see what it looks like when you can for sure tell that someone cheated versus the Noah situation where when people have kind of described the Noah situation to me, it's like they were given the Noah video and were told, okay, Noah cheated. Tell us how Noah cheated. Not watch this video. Do you think someone cheated? Is what I feel like. Basically, every time someone tried to explain to me how Noah cheated, it's like they're coming from the perspective of, we know he cheated. Now tell us how he cheated instead of do you think he cheated, which is like definitely way too different questions and two extremely different ways to like go into trying to describe the situation or trying to analyze the situation. So just speaking to the Eder situation specifically, I think, a lot of it for the situation with Gabriel here or Noah, especially because we look at the Eder situation and there's a big question mark around that situation as to why he was not banned in any way, whether it be permanent or not. And the biggest thing is just like, it comes from the TO report and how much was TPCI involved at the event. And for the Bogota special event, the answer is 0. For every IC, especially NAIC, TPCI is way more involved and way more hands-on at the actual event. So what could potentially escalate or come of these kind of situations is definitely greater than something like a special event. So a lot of it comes down to like the TOs reporting in those situations. Man, I had somewhere else I was going to go with that after that. Were we just talking about Gabriel got banned?
There was another thing I wanted to bring up too.
I was going to say, so Pokemon last year after the Makani situation made an announcement or made a statement that they're going to be more transparent and make more statements in the future. We got the Rowan statement after the Rowan situation, and then after that,
gotten anything else, have we?
yeah, but after that, it's been in silence. The one thing I will say, I don't have a good argument for this myself, but I could see one existing, and if anyone wants to discuss this in the comment section, I'm definitely interested. One thing, he is a minor. Also, he is in the juniors and seniors division because he is a kid. Does that get involved to the point where like you shouldn't be making like that? Is there a good argument to like not make statements about him because of his age? Or to me, I can't come up with a good reason. But like I feel like there could probably be a good argument out there for that, but I haven't heard it yet. So I'm not sure if there is a good argument out there for that, or if it's just like, no, he's playing in the competition like everybody else. A penalty was distributed. He is a high-profile player, despite him being a senior, like you mentioned, and we should get a statement on his ban as to why it happened. That's where I currently said I feel like we should. If they made the statement about being transparent, this seems like a good situation to be transparent about.
I don't disagree. Yeah, definitely. One thing that is definitely interesting. Just putting the puzzle pieces together, right? This disqualification coming off the back of NAIC, like it definitely it must have to do with something that happened at NAIC, like almost definitely, right? I mean, I guess don't know for sure. That tweet said that Gabriel didn't know for sure what his ban was, but I mean, yeah, it's got to be something that happened at NAIC more than likely. And Gabriel did put out a tweet after NAIC explaining the situation, saying that he was disqualified wrongly, explained why he believes that it was an erroneous disqualification.
Erroneous? Chip bringing out the dictionary on this one, bro. I've never heard the word erroneous before. Does it just mean error? Is error just a short?
In error. It's like in error.
Okay. All right. Yeah, erroneous. Sure. Go ahead.
Never had to worry about taking the SAT, so he didn't ever learn any of these big words. But
I never learned about erroneous. No.
But yeah, so he put out this tweet and he deleted it. I assume he deleted his tweet. I can't find it. It's not on his Twitter. I don't think that it was in his replies or anything like that. I think he deleted his tweet explaining about his disqualification. I'm curious as to why that would be.
Yeah, that is like a pretty it's just a bad it's like a bad look to do that. I feel like if you think you're innocent and your DQ was unjustified, which means you probably think your ban is unjustified, even if you were banned for a different reason, if you think the DQ was unjustified, which he definitely at least made this statement that he made this statement that he thought the DQ, or even that he made the statement that the DQ was unjustified. There's no reason to like delete that tweet. Are you sure it is deleted? I can go like.
I've looked all over for it. I've looked in replies. Like it ain't there.
Yeah, I mean it's not a good look. Yeah. He maybe has
looking for the replies. Looking in.
Maybe has a good reason for it, but it's not a good look. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not there.
Yeah. I'm not sure why that would be. Why you would ever delete that. The only reason I could think is like that's part of TPCI's. They were like, we're only going to ban you for 3 months if you delete the tweet, instead of like a perma ban or something.
I doubt that.
No, 100%. Yeah, that's the only reason I could think of, like why you should delete the tweet. Otherwise, I can't think of a reason to delete that tweet.
Oh, sure. I see what you're saying.
If Gabriel's out there and listening to this and has like a reason he wants to justify about it, I definitely would be open to hearing it. But I just don't think that's a good look to delete.
It's just odd, that situation.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say for sure that I think his ban is unjustified, but I still stand by my statement that I made like a couple weeks ago, where it's like, if the TPCI is not going to put out information, then we should just go off of what the players say. Until TPCI sets forth a pattern of making transparent statements on these type of situations, then I think it's fair for us to not like go all in on the players' side of the story, take that into account, and then wait for the statement from TPCI, and then look at all the evidence, all the statements, and then make our opinions from there. But I'm still down to base my opinion fully off the player side because still haven't heard anything from TPCI.
Yeah, we'll just have to see what develops from this moving forward. It's definitely unfortunate for Gabriel. I mean, you work so hard. He's obviously the defending world champion as well in the seniors division. He doesn't get a fair shot to defend his title. But I mean, I don't know. I kind of definitely err more on the side of like, it's so tough. Like, I always want to believe the best of people, right? But it's just like you just don't know for sure. You just don't ever know for sure. Like someone could, like there could be something. You would like, you want to.
Well, I'm not.
You become fans of people. You know, you see their successes. You want to root for someone, right? And Gabriel has definitely become that for many people, myself included. You know, would be an amazing success story. But it's like, you know, you and I don't know him personally, right? We don't know for sure like anything. But you know, like you said, if we don't get a statement from TPCI about their side of like what the judge's decision led to, it's like it's kind of difficult to believe anyone besides the side of the story we hear, right? But it's like you do always, I don't know, I think you want to approach situations like with a bit of nuance and with a bit of acceptance of like, you know, we just don't, you can believe one thing but like know in your head that like you can't, I don't think you can believe this without a shadow of a doubt, you know?
Well, I don't think in this whole part, everything we've said up to this point, I don't think I've said that I think Gabriel didn't cheat. I think it's possible that he definitely did cheat, but like we can only go off of what people are willing to say.
Right,
so
sure.
yeah, they did ban him. So I think we can confidently say that TPCI thinks he did cheat because they banned him, right? So we can say that for sure. TPCI thinks he did cheat. Yeah. Gabriel's initial statement made it seem like, or is him making the statement that he is, you know, innocent, at least for what happened at NAIC, but then did delete the tweet, and we've heard nothing from TPCI side either. So, man, it's kind of all up in the air now at this point. But I think it's probably where it ends, right? And also, like, one thing I will say, like, with that is, like, if someone is proven to be a cheater, even if they are, you know, if they do their time, they're allowed to come back into the game, I don't immediately like to assume that from here on out they're going to cheat and be cheaters. But I do, in my head, like, wipe their slate clean. Like, in my head, they haven't achieved anything. Like, if they get banned for cheating, then that's it. Like,
your accomplishments are out the window.
Yeah, your accomplishments are all out the window. You hit the full reset. You're coming into the game with no accomplishments once again.
You got to prove yourself once more.
Yeah, prove yourself once more. I don't, like, assume that they're going to cheat at every chance they can possibly get, even if they were banned for cheating previously. But, yeah. I mean, we'll probably won't hear anything more about this. Like, this is probably the end of it. Gabriel get unbanned in 3 months, continue to play in game again, and probably still dominate seniors next year as well, I could imagine. I would imagine.
Well, there was a tournament this past weekend. Let's move on to that. The Malaysia Championships. We don't have any super clear results, but you did stream the event throughout the weekend. Last week on the podcast, we talked about kind of the current format, the decks that we liked. We both said we liked Charizard. You were liking Sablezard, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. And I also said I liked Lugia a bit in this format. What were some of the things you kind of saw this weekend from the Malaysia Championships?
So Chien Pao, well, I'm not going to say it was that successful. There was 2 players that were on stream both multiple times throughout, and they only streamed Top Cut. They didn't stream any of day one, so I only got to see 5 rounds of the tournament, or let's see, they started at 32-16. Yeah, so we got to see 5 rounds of the tournament overall. So we didn't get to see that much of the tournament. But so we saw a decent amount of Chien Pao because Jason and Jung, if that's how you pronounce their name, were both on stream multiple times, and Jung ended up taking the whole thing down with a Chien Pao list playing the Dunsparce and Rotom and Force Healstone and Arven and Lumineon. Like, it was a
what the heck?
And Bravery Charm.
I haven't heard any of this, by the way, because I've been like on vacation and stuff, so I haven't even like kept up with all that. That sounds insane. Honestly, that's so hype though. I love to see someone have like an insane homebrew, totally different engine from like the normal engine of a deck that everyone has accepted to be the best way to play it. And then like just come out and spike a tournament with that. That's honestly so sick.
Yeah, it was a cool build. It didn't seem like it was like that much more powerful than B-Barrel or anything like that, but definitely a cool build. Ended up taking the whole thing down. Hit a what is? I mean, someone else played this deck to like some success at a late night recently. It's not Sablezard. It's basically it's like Sablezard, but you have Greninja over Charizard. So it's like basically you attack with Cram, Sableye, and Greninja, and Ursaluna. So Ursaluna kind of replaces the Radzard. So it's like you have the option of the Radiant Greninja and Ursaluna over Radzard. So it's like maybe the new way to play Sablezard, but it plays like Canceling Clone and stuff, so you can get around Klefkis and Fluttermanes, but also you have a way to get around Manaphy as well with your Greninja. So it's like a pretty turbo towards Sableye build of Lost Zone, but then also still has the Greninja in there. And that's what got second.
That's pretty cool, honestly. Yeah, I think that seems like a really good way to approach Lost Box right now. Because the biggest downside of playing Sablezard in the past was that it meant you didn't get to play Radiant Greninja, which is the best Radiant Pokemon, maybe one of the best Pokemon cards of all time. You didn't get to play it anymore. But now you get to play that with still a big threat that can do a lot of damage for one energy. And honestly, Ursaluna, 260 HP, like that guy he's way too big. That guy has so much HP.
A lot of HP, does a lot of damage for sure. So the other decks that we saw throughout Cut, there was a Frostlass, Munkidori. We saw.
So they were bringing out the spice in Malaysia, huh?
Yeah, I guess like overall from the games that we saw, it was decently spicy. There was a Lugia that we saw as well with the rat, had the Chinchino. I'm trying to think about what else made its way onto stream. That was there was Regidrago. Regidrago was there as well, which is a deck that's been gaining a decent amount of popularity recently. Actually, the late night tournament series on Limitless. For anyone who's interested in playing in Limitless or online tournaments, by the way, I guess let's give it a shout. Shout out to Robin as always. But you can go to play.limitlesstcg.com, and that's where all the online tournaments are played. They're really easy to enter. They're really easy to use the program or whatever, the system on the online tournaments to play an online tournament. So if you're interested in that, also the best way to practice the Pokemon TCG right now.
Definitely the best practice you can get in the game, for sure.
Yeah, I was going to mention that the late night series is one of the bigger online tournament series, and Christian Fontenot played Regidrago and got second in that. So the Regidrago I've seen pop up a lot on ladder recently, and then it has been like popping up, doing well in these online tournaments. I forget if it lost in top 16 or top 32. Oh, no, actually won in top 16, I want to say, in Malaysia. It beat Lost Tina as well. It beat Lost Tina over there. But yeah, it was cool to just watch some more major tournament action. I believe they had 700 players is what people were saying in my chat, like 704 players or something like that.
That's awesome.
So that's really cool. That's like a big number. They were like, the people in my chat were saying, there was like some people in my chat who had played day one, didn't make day two. So they were like mentioning what they played, how they did. And yeah, that's like a big number for their national championship, I guess you would call it, or whatever, the Malaysia championship. So yeah, Pokemon's growing everywhere. It's really crazy to see. It's really cool to see. Excited for the future for everywhere, to be honest.
So this current format is, when this episode comes out, cups and challenges are going to be happening and live, right?
Yeah.
Last week, we talked about some of the decks that we like. Do you think anything really changes for what we like right now in this format based on those results? The Lost Zone deck definitely sounds cool. Any reason to play that maybe over the Hedrick Lost Zone deck?
I mean, it might just be, I just don't know. There's so much. Lost Zone is just so weird because besides like Lost Tina, every build of Lost Zone just feels good. Like, no one's playing Jirachi, so like Sableye does so much in every matchup. Maybe that needs to be like the change, honestly, is like Lost Zone needs to become broken, and then everyone's gonna be like, all right, I gotta play Jirachi again. Maybe that's kind of like the trajectory of the meta right now, is like Lost Zone's gonna dominate until people start adding Jirachi back to their decks. More Klefkis and Guardies, stuff like that. Although most Guardies have like Klefkis right now. But yeah, Lost Zone just seems really, really good right now. So like, I don't know, tech for Lost Zone. Like I guess that's all I'd say. Like, and I can't like pinpoint a certain build, like the Hedrick build, the Sablezard, but it has Greninja. Sablezard itself, like they all feel very, very powerful right now. Honestly, there's not that much that's kind of standing in their way. Like I said, besides putting those tech cards back in, like that's like the big thing right now. But the meta is like, it's so weird. And someone like commented on the episode last week, kind of like reassuring my own like thought process on this, where I was like, I don't care about the meta right now, and it seems like no one else is. It's really weird. We're kind of in like free, like I mentioned like last week, it's like we're in free fall because there's no major tournament. It's like the major tournaments like tie in and like lock in the community to the metagame, but when there's no major tournaments, like specifically in like the TPCI region, but even then outside of it, there's not really that many major tournaments anyways. and the next one coming up in China is in a completely different format. Like it just feels like everything's kind of in free fall. Like it feels like it's really hard to pinpoint, besides Gardevoir probably being the best deck in the format, like what is popular right now? What is the next step? What do we test next? Like there's no point for us to like look at and then like build towards at all. It feels really weird. I feel like I've never felt this in the Pokemon TCG before, because I feel like usually the time between NAIC and Worlds is just usually less. So there's usually like everyone's building up together towards that next point, but we really are in a free fall time right now. Because
that's why we're seeing a lot of people kind of experiment with like alternate formats. I've seen a lot of the expanded posts. I've seen a lot of the GLC stuff. We talked about that last week a little bit, which I think is just a good thing. I think it's like good to enjoy Pokemon outside of just the standard format.
Yeah, I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about just enjoying Pokemon as we move forward into talking about the
foreshadowing.
Yeah. But yeah, as far as like cups and challenges coming up, yeah, I don't know. Like, and local metas on top of that are sometimes just weird in general, right? Like sometimes the most popular deck in the format, the strongest deck in the format, isn't even that popular for you, like the local meta, right? People are just going to play what they want to play overall, and that's going to be dictating what people are playing. And when there's no guide, I would say like major tournament results are usually a good guide for people to latch onto to decide what to play or what to try next. There's no guide right now for people to kind of go with that. So I think things are going to be all over the place for local metas, on top of them already sometimes being a little bit weird.
Definitely. Well, let's keep on moving forward here in the episode, because I think our last topic here is we're going to be talking about for a long time. So let's go ahead and move on to Guess That Flavor Text. But before we do, of course, need to give a thank you to our amazing sponsor, Dragon Shield, for supporting us here at the Uncommon Energy Podcast. At this point, you guys know them, you love them. Dragon Shield makes some of the best card gaming and tabletop gaming products on the market. We use their sleeves. They are some of the best in the game. And they've got a brand new color out right now, their Anniversary Blue. It's a really nice blue matte, dual matte on the back with the silver on the inside. It looks super, super good with the silver border Pokemon cards, especially as well. I used them at NAIC, really have enjoyed them. And if you want to pick up some of the brand new 25th anniversary special edition sleeves, I'm going to have a link in the description of the video for you to do just that. Of course, if you do pick up any sleeves and use that link, that will help to support us here.
Yeah, shout out to Dragon Shield as always. Check them out. You can use code UEPOD, get yourself 5% off, and you directly support us here on the podcast. Up next, we got Guess That Flavor Text. It's my week to pick a card, read the flavor text on it, and then Chip can try and guess which Pokemon that card belongs to based on the flavor text and some lifelines if he wants to use them. Without using a lifeline, Chip would get 4 points for each lifeline used, minus 1 point. The lifelines are what set the card is from, what stage the card is, and then read an attack name. Chip, you ready for this week's flavor text?
I definitely am. Let's get it, buddy.
All right. Its body bristles with sharp spikes. Carelessly trying to touch it could cause fainting from the spikes.
Okay. One of my first thoughts is definitely some sort of poison Pokemon, due to especially the fainting from the sharp spikes. So like Quillfish has spikes. I don't know if Stunky has spikes on it. Stunky and Stunfisk. Not Stunfisk. What's the evolution of Stunky?
I was gonna say, even I know that doesn't evolve into
yeah. Stunky, gosh, what's it evolve into?
Skuntank, right?
The big Skuntank. Yeah. But that's a skunk. And I'm like, there's not a porcupine Pokemon, is there? Am I tripping? There's not, right? Let me hear the flavor text again, Azul.
Its body bristles with sharp spikes. Carelessly trying to touch it could cause fainting from the spikes.
I'm having a feeling that this is like a Pokemon who doesn't actually like have visible spikes, but it's like got like fur or something that in reality it's like actual anatomy. It has spikes, but like based on what we see it as, like in drawings and the video game and stuff, it doesn't actually look like spikes. That's kind of what I'm thinking potentially right now. Let me use some lifelines here. Let's go with what set the card is from.
Burning Shadows.
Burning Shadows. Okay, so that's the Charizard GX set. That's the Gardevoir GX set. I don't think there's a quillfish there. Okay. What? Let me hear an attack name.
Water arrow.
Water arrow. I mean, maybe it's quillfish then. Water arrow. Spikes. Bristles. Oh, is it like Marini? Potentially? Marini? I definitely am just thinking, I'm latching onto like the poison idea here. Let me go with what stage the card is.
It is a stage 1.
Stage 1. Gosh, what the heck does Marini evolve into? What's that thing called? Toxapex? I don't think there's a Toxapex in that set. The bristles. Oh, man. I'm just kind of lost here. I might just have to go with Toxapex because I can't think of anything else. I just said something else too. What else did I say? Water arrow is the attack. What other stage 1 water? Am I thinking too hard about the poison thing potentially? Let me just go with Toxapex, I guess. It is from that era. I don't know that there is one in Burning Shadows. Let's go with Toxapex. Lock it in.
It is not Toxapex. I'll give you one more hint just so you can try and get it.
For funsies.
Yeah, for funsies. It's stage 2 has an EX coming out in the next set.
In the like world set?
Yeah.
Seadra.
Seadra. Yeah, I thought you would maybe get there off Water Arrow. I was like, Water Arrow.
I was kind of too locked in on the poison type thing, I think.
Yeah, I would never have, looking at Seadra, like I don't think I would have ever guessed that it has poison spikes. Like it doesn't look like it has poison spikes at all.
That's a tough one. But all's fair, you know. I mean, you didn't get Furfro last week, so I guess.
Dude, I thought of Furfro too. Man, next time. Gotta go with your gut instinct, I guess.
Yeah. Well, if I'd have done that, I would have guessed quillfish. So I guess that would have been closer than Toxapex. I don't know. They're both kind of not that close.
All right. So big announcement this week from Pokemon, breaking down the structure for the invitation, breaking down a lot of stuff for the season, for next season, for 2025, invitation goals, and a bunch of other stuff.
So much to unpack here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like crazy. I guess the amount of information they gave us isn't that crazy. It's just crazy the amount of things that are changing, I think.
I will say it's like nice. It would have been nice to get this sooner, obviously. But like this is like, I feel like reasonably timely. And I think, I'm not trying to give TPCI credit. I just want the community to stop, I say this all the time, like stop complaining about literally everything when there's nothing to complain about yet. Like complain about things that are worth complaining about. Like, yeah, like they're good. They're this is like reasonable. I feel like I'm not like crazy to say that, right? Time frame wise.
Like, yeah, I don't think it's like absurd that this is when, I mean, I think it makes sense. The new season starts July 1st. So,
came out before then.
Yep. You know, 3 months from June until July, August, like the first tournament that they mentioned here, the middle of September, right? Mm-hmm. You know, a little less than 3 months to plan travel. I mean, I think that's generally a good amount of time. Maybe not enough time for some people to get off of work. I know that's something people are always worried about when it comes to these events, is like, you know,
which is something I become more
getting time.
More, what is the word I'm looking for? Empathetic to? Is that the right word? Mm-hmm. Because I've like actually like had discussions with people like in my chat on Twitch and stuff, talking about like how much time do you need? Like, because like for me, it's just that's not something I've ever had to deal with. Even when I was doing like landscaping, I was doing like I had my own landscaping stuff, so I could like make my own schedule. So I've always like kind of been my own boss for any kind of work stuff that I've ever done. So hearing it from enough people who like, you know, work the 9 to 5s but still want to participate in these major events, you know, it seems like 3 to 4 months would be nice to have the information for these events, if not sooner, of course. So, yeah, I mean, I think we could jump into it point by point here, and then the first thing that comes up in the article is them saying that they're going to expand upon the auto invites going into the next season. All special events will now get an auto invite. Last year was only European special events that got an invitation to the World Championships. And then top 4 finishers of ICs will also get a invite, as well as regional champions. Regional champions, IC champions will get an invitation to the World Championships, and then top 4 finishers of international championships will also get an invite to the World Championships. So expanding upon the auto invites that they introduced from last year, which this is something I was asking for. I would like to see them go further, though, and I hope they do go further next season.
Yeah, I wouldn't have hated to see top 8 for just both of those tournaments get an invite. Honestly, like not special events, I would say, but like top 8 of a region. I think definitely. I think that does a couple things. Top 8 of a regional is getting an auto invite. I think gives like the difference between winning a regionals and then getting top 8 is like really there's a lot that has to go right from going from top 8 into winning the whole event. Right, the bracket has to set up nicely for you with your matchups. You have to hit good matchups. You have to draw well. I've seen the most spaghetti games of Pokemon I think I've ever seen, like in top 8s of regional championships. It just seems like for some reason people's decks just fail them at top 8 of tournaments. But I think that would be a attainable goal that people could place for themselves of like, if I get top 8 of this tournament, hey, there's only 2 regionals left. If I go to both of these and I can spike top 8 at one of them, I still get my Worlds invite, even if I'm not going to get to the top 125, which we'll talk about here in a second.
Yeah, which I think would be nice. It'd be nice to like have like winning the whole thing pretty tough. Like it feels like that's like a more obtainable goal for any player to try and aspire towards throughout the season. So
it's not easy by any means.
Yeah, but they did expand upon it compared to last season, which is something I was asking for leading up to this announcement happening. So I'm glad that they did that, and I want to see them to continue to expand on it because I think we could have this season. I think we could have pushed for like top 8 at ICs and top 4 at regionals and special events or something like that.
Sure.
So hopefully they keep expanding upon it as early as next season, if hopefully not the season after that. Then the next thing that I think we should talk about next, just because like just the way it lines up in the article, is this little blurb at the bottom of this first part of World's qualification updates. We also look forward to sharing more about a Championship Points season reward program for trainers who show great dedication to the Play Pokemon program, which will operate similar to the fixed Championship Point threshold from recent years. So I feel like this is something you bring up all the time. Another goal besides the World's invite. This sounds like that is that, but we don't have the full details yet. So how good will it be? We don't know yet.
Yeah, and based on this, it will operate similar to the fixed Championship Point threshold from recent years. It sounds like it'll be if you achieve X, you earn X.
Yeah.
What X, so we got to solve for X. That's what we're figuring out now. Is it in the past, they've had the player reward program where people received stamped promos of playable cards in the meta, which is really cool. I think those have been cool rewards in the past. That's kind of before my time. By the time I was playing, those were kind of phased out, but I know there's like the player reward Pokemon catchers and hypnotoxic lasers that people are all big fans of. Like there's player reward call energies, I'm pretty sure as well.
I think it's where is that where the Harcourt's Silver stamped energy come from too? Maybe?
Yeah, I think you're right. The crosshatch stamped Harcourt's Silver energies. So, but then there's also there's some stuff that's really cool, but then they moved on from like the Harcourt's Silver stamped energies to just like the regular, whatever the basic energy of that generation was with like a crosshatch stamp, which is like kind of cool, but it's way less cool than like a hypnotoxic laser or like a super playable meta card.
Yeah.
And I saw someone's tweet say something like, imagine you get like 126th on the Championship Point leaderboard at the end of the year, and your only reward is getting a pack of energy cards in the mail or something like that.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully they do a lot with it in like a big way.
There's so much potential for what they could do, right?
Yeah. And it's such an easy system for them too. They have to do nothing basically. It's just like they have to come up with the numbers and what you can possibly get from achieving those numbers, or what you can get from achieving those numbers, right? I have no idea what that looks like. but hopefully it is something worth trying to, hit those numbers with. And like they can do very little, but they could put very little effort, but it would be like a big deal for people in the community, I feel like. So hopefully it feels like this would be really hard to mess up, to be honest. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a softball coming at them right now.
Yeah.
See if they can hit it out of the park.
The big change, unless you have something else to understand that.
No, I was gonna read this, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the big change that happened is we have changed the invite system in the regions under TPCI from earn X amount of championship points to get your Worlds invite. This season for Masters in US and Canada, you have to get 600 championship points. And we've moved on to a top X system, which is top X players on the leaderboard now earn their Worlds invite. So there's not a specific number of championship points you have to gain, but now for US and Canada in the Masters division, you have to have enough championship points to be within the top 125 players.
Yeah, and just going down the Masters division in Europe, it's 125 as well. In Latin America, it's 100. In Oceania, it's 20. And then the Middle East, South Africa region, it is 10.
Yeah.
So,
what was it?
Yeah, this is the biggest thing for sure. And this is the biggest thing that people were this is the
Mostly
driving
upset.
point of all the discussion. Yeah, I don't want to say most upset because it's like some people seem to really like this change and some people seem to really dislike it. It was definitely like just the discussion driver was this topic of the 125 versus the championship point threshold.
Yeah, so it is gonna make it harder to get your Worlds invite. That's for sure.
Yes,
Which is something I personally don't have a super strong opinion on. I think it shouldn't have been easier to get. I don't think it should have been easier to get a Worlds invite than it was last season. I don't hate the idea of it being harder either, but I honestly don't like the idea of there not being like a fixed goal to play for, and you are kind of, and I think it's not as bad as people are making it out to be, but I definitely understand the idea of kind of going into the unknown, right? You don't know how many championship points you need to get top 125, and I don't think it's going to be like a super unrealistic number.
I think it's going to be less than people are expecting it to be.
Yeah, I saw some people like throwing out the number like 1,000. I don't think we're going to hit 125 people with over 1,000 championship points. I don't think it's going to happen. So I think there will be, you'll have to go to a similar, for people who like got their invite last season, you'll have to go to a similar number of major tournaments, but you will probably have to place higher at those major tournaments or spike a really, really good finish at least like a regional or an IC to actually end up in the top 125. I would have preferred if they had just increased, if they want to make the invite harder, which it's obvious they do by the change they made. I would have liked to have seen them just increase the championship point threshold to like 700, 800. Although I do understand that by TPCI just setting numbers for the amount of players, this lets them more easily control just the overall event and the expectations of what Worlds is going to look like for them and like planning.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing here is they want to know how many players they're going to have competing in their main event. And they can make that assumption pretty safely here. With the only like wild card now at this point is how many people will earn an automatic invite from winning a tournament or getting top 4 at an IC, right? That's the only wild card here, which they can plan for. Add in, worst case scenario, if every person who gets top 4 at one of the 3 ICs and every person who wins the regionals doesn't get into the top X of their region, then we know this is the most amount of people we could possibly have at Worlds. We can plan around that.
Well, no, even if they are in top X, it does push the invite down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So just for anyone who's like listening, so if 10 American/Canadian players win 10 of the regionals and end up in the top 125 players in US and Canada, those players will not take up one of the top 125 spots. So the top 125 for US and Canada will only be made up of players who don't have an auto invite from finishing well at, or from winning a regional or a special event or top 4 in an international championship, which is pretty cool. I think that's a good layout there. However, just like last season, auto invites will not pass down. So if you win a regional and then you win another regional, your auto invite does not go to the person in second place or anything like that. I think one thing that this whole discussion around the new season has made me realize is like I said, I don't know if it should be harder to get your Worlds invite. TPCI did make it harder. The one thing I know for sure though that I'm like definitely set on is I don't think players who don't see any improvement, who aren't already top players or aren't trying to improve or see any improvement throughout the season, those players should not be able to. Ideally, we want a system that doesn't allow those players to earn a Worlds invite. You should be improving at the game and getting better, or at least trying to do that in a meaningful way. And if you're not doing that, we should want a system that doesn't allow players who don't put forth that effort to be able to get to the World Championships. If you're putting forth that effort, then I think that the system that we should have should lead to those players getting to the World Championships. The players who are putting in effort and trying to get better and trying to improve tournament to tournament. And I think this system does lean more towards that than previous systems, because a lot of players would just kind of play to get top 256, had a couple of regionals, get their invite, and they had no drive to want to improve. They were just their drive was just, you know, to get the World's invite, more so to then to get better at the game. Which is fine, because that's the system we had, and that's the way you want to approach it. That's kind of whatever. But I think the people who should be getting to Worlds are the players who are trying to drastically improve at the game, who show up to tournaments trying to win, to try and top 8 these tournaments, to push for something of a higher level for themselves in the game. Those are the players I want at the World Championships. So I think the system, especially year over year, will make things more competitive in that realm. And I think overall the level of competition because of this system is going to be pushed higher than it's ever been in the Pokemon TCG. So I am excited for that aspect of this system.
Yeah,
for sure.
One of my reactions to this is like, as someone who does not compete any longer, really, I mean, I play a couple events a year, right? But, you know, I mostly enjoy the game as a spectator through the lens of casting most of the time, but I enjoy the game and want to see just good, high quality Pokemon being played. I'm really excited about like the potential storylines that can be created from this, of like, you know, following someone who's in that, you know, 110 range, like at an AIC, like, does this person lock up the last few points to ensure that they can make it happen? Or, you know, following someone who's in the 140 range who is making a deep run in an event and seeing like, oh, they're going to put themselves in a position to now be in the top 125. I think there's a lot of cool things that'll happen at the end of the season. But there's also going to be a lot of people who come away upset at the end of the season, where it's like, if X thing didn't happen, then I would have gotten my invite. And it's like, I feel like I played my best, but something just didn't quite work out, or like, you know, X person had just a little bit better tournament than I did, and that led to them jumping me in the leaderboard. I mean, those things will definitely happen, right?
Yeah. I mean, as a competitor, it does kind of, that is kind of like an exciting aspect of this, is like, you actually have to, like, it feels like you actually now have to play for your invite, right? You're actually actively competing against the other competitors to like get your World's invite, because there's not unlimited of them anymore, which does make things more interesting. Now, to go with that though, one of the big like talking points that people brought up is like, well, because of that, we are now, like, one thing I hated hearing in the old system was when people would bring up, oh, well, you know, player A can travel to every single major and every single IC and even special events, and I can't. So it's just kind of pay to win to get your invites. Like, no, because they're not taking anything away from you, right? Someone going to literally every single major last season in 2024 did not stop you from getting your 600 championship points. But now there is a little bit more of that. Players who can travel to more are actively giving themselves higher odds of placing higher, which could bump you out of top 125, right? And the big discussion that people have brought up is ICs. There is no best finish limit for ICs. It's been combined with regionals. So now you have a best finish limit, six BFL. And if anyone who doesn't know what a best finish limit is, if you go to 3 ICs and 7 regional championships and you earn championship points at all of them, your top 6 championship point numbers will count towards your World's invite, and nothing else will count. So only 6 of those 10 championship point numbers will count towards your World's invite. So it's a BFL of 6 for special events, regionals, and ICs. ICs you can earn way more points at than regionals potentially, and those are the things that are a little bit harder to travel because you are traveling internationally. No matter where you're from, if you're from Europe, you know, you can go to London, EUIC, but you have to travel internationally for the other 2, right? So you will have to, those players will have to, you know, that's like a bigger burden on the player, time-wise, money-wise. But that is, there's still 125 slots to play for, and the players who do go to all 3 ICs and earn championship points at all 3 ICs, you won't actively be competing against those players, because those players will be like in the top 60 players with their World's invite, right? There's still going to be 30 to 40 invites towards the bottom half of the 125, where players who can only go to maybe one maybe two ICs, and then 3 to 5 regionals will be competing against each other. So your opportunity to get your Worlds invite is still there, but you're competing. You just aren't going to be able to compete against everyone to get your Worlds invite. Some people are going to go to enough events where they will be out of reach for you to play for that Worlds invite, but you can still play for number 125, right? Which I think is like something people aren't really thinking about. Like you're not competing against everyone. The people who have way more who can go to like everything and get way more championship points than you, they're going to be number like 30 on the leaderboard. You're not competing against them. You're competing against the player whose number, is in like from 100 to 125. Those are the people you're competing against if you're traveling to less. So there is still that opportunity if you get your Worlds invite. It is going to be less guaranteed because you maybe can't travel as much, but like the opportunity is still there for not going to as many events.
And the potential advantage of going to the ICs is definitely massive. Like if you're someone who wants to really chase after the invite, like I think it would definitely be to your benefit to trying to make as many of the ICs happen as possible.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And let's go ahead from here to break down the changes to how people earn the championship points. We talked about how the threshold is now gone. You have to get top X. How do you earn those points, right? So there's no changes to league challenges and league cups as far as how many championship points they award, but the best finish limit for them did change. It was 6 last season for each of those, 6 for challenges, 6 for cups. Now it is down to just 4. And this seemed to be something that unanimously people were pretty happy with.
Yeah, it's one of those things where most people are going to be able to fill out their locals points to like an 80% efficiency, but if not greater, right? So it's like everyone was going to get there, but like you're kind of forcing everyone to have to play for those more, those more points.
Are you going to cups and challenges this year, Azul?
No, because they're even less relevant this season than last season for me. So I'm happy for that. They're going to be like almost not relevant for me at all. Unless I if I get to that, they didn't say anything about like tier 1, tier 2 invites for Worlds. So those might not even be a thing, possibly. I think they'll at least have some form of stipends or travel awards, almost for sure. But if there's no buy, it's like way less relevant. So, but yeah, the BFL changed to 4 and 4 for cups and challenges, which is like one of those things where it's like, you may as well not have to put that extra burden on everyone to be like, well, I've got 4 cup wins, but we have a BFL of 6. So if I do want to try for my Worlds, I got to get these last 2 cup wins. I think it reduces the burden of having to go to local events off of everyone a little bit more, which is nice. Of course, still a lot of people still just enjoy going to go to them. And for any of the stipend or travel award chasers, the BFL of 4 still exists for the quarters or those time periods between ICs, which
the rating periods.
Yeah, which is unfortunate they didn't reduce it down to 2 or whatever, but that still it's an improvement, right? Because it was 6 before, so it being less is definitely better. It makes no sense to have it be so high, so it is down to 4 now. But yeah, cups and challenges still do count towards that, which is something people have been asking to be changed. I will say with a lot of these changes, a lot of the changes are things that people have been asking for, so they definitely listen to the community.
Yes. I think that the change from from the championship point threshold to top X drowned out the positive changes here, because there's a lot of really positive changes. The drop there, and if we scroll down and look at the things awarded here for regionals and ICs, internationals awarded a lot more points than regionals, which was the case in the past. They have scaled everything upwards though, and I think a massive thing is that regionals pay a lot more respectable point amounts, right? I think previously, if you got top 32 at a regionals, which was 2,500 people, you got 50 championship points, which is the exact same thing you would get for winning a 20-person league cup. Those two things did not feel equal. Now top 32 is 125 points, which is much better, right? And they've changed, it scales all the way down, and they've got a kicker down here all the way for the 2,049 player mark, which would be points to the top 1,024, which honestly, I expect that we will hit for probably every regionals this year.
Yeah, so this drastically changes the potential to get your invite. These changes would have been good last year, I think, as well. Just more points for these deeper placements at these major tournaments. But I think these changes are also just really good for this system of top X. You're really rewarding the players who have really good tournament runs. And because the BFL is set to 6, before ICs and regionals and special events, it does lessen the blow for players who can't go to as many major tournaments, because even if you only go to one IC and someone goes to 3 ICs, if they go to 3 ICs and 6 regionals, they only get, let's say, the 3 IC placements plus 3 regional placements. But if you go to 5 regionals and 1 IC, all of your regional placements count under the BFL and your 1 IC placement counts. So you can compete, your regional placements can compete against IC placements, which sure, a top 32 at a regional being 125 points and a top 32 at an IC being 350 points is a big difference, but it allows you to compete more like locally, right? With just like a local regionals as opposed to international. And also going deeper into tournaments is more heavily rewarded. So you don't really, which is something that's good about the system. I'm not gonna say you don't really have an excuse, but like the opportunity is still there. Even if it requires you to top 8 one of these regional championships, I think if your response to me saying that is like, but that's so hard to do, how can you expect any player to just do that or strive to do that? And I'm like, if that's something you don't strive to do, I don't think you should be at the World Championships. Even in last year's system.
If you think top 8ing a regionals is potentially too hard, then you almost definitely have to think that winning the World Championships is too hard, right? And if you think winning the World Championships is too hard, maybe you shouldn't be a World Championship competitor, right? Ideally, you want everyone who is competing at the World Championships to feel like I've got a shot to win Worlds, right? Yeah. And if you're walking into the event, like for the last several years, all anyone has cared about is getting their invitation. So many people get their invitation and then don't even test for Worlds. They just show up and play whatever deck they've been playing all year. And they're like, I made it here. I'm happy. And that's great. That's, I'm happy for those people. But from a competition standpoint and wanting to crown a world champion, you want the people who are competing at that event to, if they don't feel like they have a shot to win the event, then how is anyone supposed to be excited about potentially seeing them, compete at the tournament, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that's something that this whole discussion has made me realize. Like I said, I don't even care if the getting your Worlds invite was as easy as last season. I don't really care one way or another that it's harder to get your Worlds invite. But I think the mentality around the Worlds invite in the Pokemon community is like a really toxic thing. And that for sure I know. And I think the idea that that players are wanting their Worlds invite but are showing up to these tournaments and not that they're not trying to win. Obviously when you show up on the day of the tournament, you're like, you're going to try your best to try and win.
Yeah,
but like the overall mentality is not, I'm showing up to this regional to try and win this regional, to try and top 8 this regional, to try and win this IC. The mentality is like, I'm going to try and get top 256 to get my 50 points towards my Worlds invite. And then it's like, the goal is the Worlds invite, and then from there it doesn't matter. If it was easier to get Worlds invite, and the mentality around the Worlds invite and the way the community viewed the Worlds invite and viewed Worlds was to try and improve, become a better player, tournament after tournament throughout the season, then I'd be fine to have it be easier to get Worlds invite. But if we need a system like this where it has to push players to have to achieve more to get their Worlds invite, then I think I prefer this system to last year's system. But it's because of the way the community views it. It has nothing to do with actually being harder or easier. It's how people view the idea of the Worlds invite in the Pokemon TCG. And until that changes, I'm all for a system that pushes that kind of competitive mindset. And if you're not a competitive person and you don't want to have that competitive mindset, then why do you care about the World Championships anyways? Just, you can still enjoy Pokemon casually. Just go to whatever locals and regionals you can, and you don't have to be playing the Pokemon TCG with the idea of getting a Worlds invite. And that's fine. I think there is going to be a mindset change in the community. TPCI is not changing anything. Because to kind of go on a little bit more of a tangent here, back when I started playing the game, no one played for their Worlds invite at all. The system when I started playing the game was top 40. I'm not saying this is a better system, but when I started playing the game, the system was top 40 got their Worlds invite in US. I think Canada was completely separate. It was either US and Canada or just US. The top 40 players in an ELO system, which means based on your opponent's ELO, when you beat them in any tournament, you would get more or less ELO for wins and losing. And it would scale with how high of a caliber of a tournament was. So like Battle Roads and City Championships would hurt your ELO less, or you'd gain less as well. And then when you played at Nationals and Regionals, it would have a higher impact in State Championships. But when I started playing, I didn't play for my Worlds invite. None of my friends played for their Worlds invite. The best players in my area did, and we all knew who the best players were, and we knew that they were going to go to Worlds and get their Worlds invite. But that didn't affect how I viewed the game or played the game. So from me coming from all the way back in 2010 to where I am now, I can confidently say the idea around the Worlds invite in the Pokemon TCG community is toxic. And that needs to change at the very least. And then whatever else goes alongside that, like, I don't really care how hard the Worlds invite ticket is from there. But if we need this kind of system to make that change around that, then I feel like kind of like so be it. Then we need that kind of shift. I did see one good take on this from Steven, the owner of TC Evolutions, was just like, this feels like a little bit too much too fast. And I think I could agree with that. I think maybe they should have tried to ease into the system. Maybe it should have been like top 250, and then we start to scale it down over the next 2 to 3 seasons. Because this is a pretty big shakeup from where we were last season.
Yeah. I mean, because how many Masters qualified in the U.S. this year? Like around 250, right?
270, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're cutting the invite from the largest rating zone effectively in half, right?
Yeah.
And then some of the rating zones are cut even farther. Like I think Oceania, right? How many Worlds invites did they achieve? It was like so many this year, right?
100 and something, 120 or something.
Yeah, but and they're down to 20. But I think I've seen a lot of sentiment from Australian players that like achieving the Worlds invite was probably a little too easy in Australia this year.
Well, yeah. What was the meme? Don't ask a woman her age, a man his salary, or an Australian player how they got their Worlds invite.
Yeah.
And before someone posts in the comments about how brutal it is and that Oceania is getting screwed over, listen, it does suck because I know there's players in the Oceania region who love Pokemon and want to play Pokemon. Y'all had 704 players who had championship points last year, who earned a championship point. There was 76,000 American or U.S. and Canadian players. Like comparatively, like people, the only statistic that people bring up is like we went from 120 invites to 20. Like that's ridiculous. And it's like, if you bring in one statistic, let's bring the rest of the statistics into the situation here. Like, listen, I'm not saying I don't want y'all to have events, but if I'm TPCI, I'm like, bro, they got 700 players over there. Like, what are we doing? We can't, like, how can we justify giving them more major tournaments or an IC, which they did take away the IC. And when you put that into perspective and you bring all the statistics, not just one, and you get everything involved, I'm not saying I don't want them to have events, but I can understand it from TPCI's side. And I don't think the Oceania region is getting screwed. I just think you don't have that many players who play Pokemon, and they're still able to through the events that they have, and that's just kind of the way it is, to be honest. I don't think TPCI actually is screwing over the Oceania region at all. I think that it just kind of sucks. It's just kind of the product of living in Australia, to be honest, because I'm sure there's like a lot of other things in Australia that are similar with that, in that aspect of being kind of like removed from the world a little bit for where they are, or being removed from like the rest of the world to an extent, right? And this is an international competition. It's kind of just the way it is. Like, yeah, I don't think, because I've seen multiple people throw that stat out there, but just like you're not bringing the full picture. You're just kind of like cherry picking one stat to throw out there, which just doesn't show the full picture. But yeah, I'm not saying, I hope they keep the region around for a while. A lot of very dedicated Australian players, but yeah, I don't think
some of the best players in the world are from Australia.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't think y'all can be expecting too much moving forward. I think you're probably going to be plateauing for a while as to what you have, because there's not that much growth in the game over there. So how can you really justify putting more majors and stuff over there?
Another aspect here is that the regional championships and internationals have had their best finish limit combined. We talked about this a little bit briefly. And I think it does put a lot more emphasis on the internationals, because the ICs, like, they just still pay out so many more points. Like even a mediocre finish of a top 256 in an IC, which, may or may not be, I don't know, if there's 2,500 people, you're finishing in the top 10% of the field, that gets you 120 championship points, right? To get that level of championship points, you have to get top 32 at a regionals. So it's a pretty big difference. And I would say on average, the ICs are definitely a little bit harder than the regionals, right? But it's not, I don't think it's like the tournament field is just so large, right? And the best players, the size of like the top players is still relatively small. It's not like, even though the best players are all at these tournaments, I think they are like harder to win maybe, but it's not like the internationals, I think, are like that much more difficult than regionals to get like a really deep placement, I would say. I think, is that fair?
Yeah, I would say like maybe like a step below, like getting a top 32 or getting like a
Yeah,
uh
like a
yeah,
top 64 finish at a IC is equivalent to a top 32ing a regionals in your mind.
is that how I want to go with this? I think so. Yeah. Uh
I'm not.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to speak for you,
I
but
think
that
that's what I'm
sounded
trying
like
to.
that's what you're trying to
Well,
say.
I kind of lost my train of thought a little bit there for sure. But yeah, like I had mentioned before, though, like the players who get, first of all, there are going to be very few players who get like top 128 at 3 ICs. Even that, right?
Yeah.
And the best players in the world are the ones who are most likely going to be able to achieve this because they'll be
Also,
going to all 3 ICs. But they're going to be up there in like the top 20. This is what I mean when I'm saying like you have to like think about it. You're not competing against everyone. If you're someone who's going to be on like the lower half of the championship point threshold to get 125, you're not competing against the players who like are getting like 3-day twos at ICs. You're competing against the players who are towards the 125th slot. The players who get, if someone gets like top 64 pluses at ICs, they're gonna be in like the top 10 players in the rating zone. Like you're not gonna be competing against them. You're not competing against the players who are going to every IC and getting championship points at every IC. Like, so I don't think people understand that. Like those players will exist, but they're going to be really far away from you in the rankings if you're someone who's not going to be competing on that
also,
level.
one other thing, the top two players currently in the US rating zone, Ian Robb and Andrew Hedrick, only got points at one IC apiece. And they finished first and second.
That's a good point. Yeah. There's a lot of, I mean, yeah, like there's a lot of players who didn't, like in that top half, like the top 16 at US and Canada, who went to every IC, but didn't only earned points at two or one of them, or only went to one or two of them.
One or two. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Yeah, I don't think, yeah, it's just like it is going to be hard to get your Worlds invite for sure. You are going into the unknown, and that the unknown
And it will be
is
easier to get the
discouraging.
World's invite. It will be easier to get into the top 125 if you go to all three ICs. That just
Yes,
is
it is true.
undeniable.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think the biggest thing is just you're going into the unknown. It's just really discouraging to go into the unknown, right? Because last year, like, oh, I have to get 600 championship points. I know what that looks like. But I think year over year, as we get more data on top 125, as long as it stays roughly similar to that, people will be able to work off of that data as well. Going into the season, you'll have a rough idea of what you need to accomplish going into the season. I think if we knew that right now, a lot less people would be like freaked out about like, well, I'm just not going to play Pokemon this season. I'm not going to even try for my Worlds invite this season. But to be honest, if those players aren't trying to improve or trying to get better, I honestly don't care if we lose those players as potential Worlds competitor. Like I said, I want players. I don't care if you just picked up Pokemon today. If you're going to try and improve and get better at the game and you're striving to be a better player, I want you to potentially be able to get your Worlds invite. And you can. If you can get a top 8 in a regional or an IC, spike that big finish, that gets you your Worlds invite, you're good to go. I don't want players who are complacent and are content with just getting top 256 at 5 or 6 regionals throughout the season, and their goal is just to do that to get their Worlds invite. I want players who want to achieve more and do more to be the ones that get their Worlds invite. So I just want I'm excited for the mentality shift that this will force on the community, personally, with that kind of shakeup that's going to happen. And we might lose, like there might be some people who quit Pokemon over this as well. And I mean, that kind of sucks. Like, I don't want anyone to have to like quit the game that they love and enjoy playing. But I think like learning to love and enjoy the game for the major tournaments you can go to and trying to win or top 8 that 1 or 2 regionals you're able to go to. But even then, going to 1 or 2 regionals last season, unless you were top 8ing them, you need to still go to like 4 or 5 regionals, right? Like, because you need to get either like a deep placement in 1 regional, like a top 8, or you had to get like top 128 at like 4 or 5 regionals, right? To get your Worlds invite still. So like you still needed to go, you either needed a deep placement or you needed to go to 5 or 6 majors. So like, I don't know if that's too much different from how the lower half of invites this season is going to play out for US and Canada. Like if you get a really deep placement, if you go to like 3 majors and get a really deep placement at one of them, or you go to like 4 or 5 majors and get like some 64s, like you're probably going to be competing for that 25th slot or in the range of like that 25th slot. So, yeah, I don't know if I have too much more to say on this. Did we miss any like key points?
I mean, let's go through the booster packs, because that's another thing that changed here. Because they did, we talked about the good things that they changed, right? Something that people have been asking for is like, that the people who, I don't know, just more is good, right? More prizing is generally good for the players, right? Yep. And they did increase the amount of prizing you get at tournaments this year. If you got top 64 at the regionals, you got 18 booster packs. And now, It's quite a bit more, especially for these larger tournaments. So if there's over 2,049 players in the tournament, the top 128 players at minimum are going to get a booster box. That is a massive change. Whereas to get a booster box previously, you had to get to the top 32. And then now if you get to the top 32, you get 72 booster packs, which is 2 booster boxes, right? So top 32 gets 2, and then 64, 128, and 256 all get, or not 256, 64 and 128 all get a booster box, which is great.
Yeah, and then if there is the other numbers, right, we're looking at 129 or top 256 getting the 18 booster packs, all the way down to 512.
Yeah,
getting 9 booster packs, which 9 is still something. I wish.
And then most of the people in this range will not be playing in day 2, right? 257 to 512. So it's like you play through the end of your day. And you're at least like still playing for something, right? If you're playing in like round 8, round 9, it's like, okay, I can't make it to day 2 anymore, but I still got, I can play for a few more booster packs. I want to play Pokemon anyway because I enjoy playing Pokemon. So boom, here we go. And then you try to get yourself to that point to come away with at least something for sure.
Yeah, someone actually sent me an interesting chart about the potential amount of people who are actually going to be making day 2 with the new round.
That is
system,
another
which we'll
thing.
get into.
That's the thing we haven't talked about yet.
There's going to be a lot less people in day 2s. Is I think the projection, which is not a bad thing or a good thing. But yeah, well, I guess we'll get to that next. The one thing that they didn't say anything about, which I think everyone wants, is just which every other card game does. We'll bring it up again. Stamped promo cards for majors, cards.
Everyone gets a stamped promo card, but it's not placement.
Yeah,
right?
we want a day 2 top 256, top 32, placement card. I mean, that maybe still have stuff like that though, kind of tied to the.
That might be what the championship point threshold thing is going to be. Yeah, that would be definitely really cool. And I would be fine if that was what they did, right? We don't get it at the regionals, but you get a championship point. If you earn X amount of points, you get X stamped card. Or X, what if it was X points to spend on stamped cards from a championship point store or something like that, right?
Yeah, it just seems really hard for them to screw that up. They could, but there's so many cool things you could do with that. It seems like that's really hard to screw up. Scrolling down, the pricing for this year is the same as last year. They didn't change anything about that. There was an initial scare because they messed up the numbers somewhere, I think, right?
Yeah, they basically, when they posted this, the $10,000 to first place was just not there. The top row was missing, pretty much.
Yeah,
and everything was moved up. So it looked like first place only got 7,000, second place got 5,000. So it was they just took away money from, and then top 32 didn't get prizing anymore. Or it was it was 750 or something like that. Something weird happened.
But they did it correct it all. So yeah, it's the exact same pricing from last season, which I'm personally I still have yet to have anyone explain to me why the prize money should go any deeper at regionals and stuff. I think it's fine at top 32.
Like I said, more is good, right?
Yeah,
I mean, if top 64 got $500, I don't think that's a bad thing, but everything has to be justifiable from a cost perspective to the Pokemon Company International, right? This is all marketing. They
also to go a little to go a little bit further that. Pokemon would like to give us as much money as possible. If they could say the winner of their regional championships won $1 million, do you know how much publicity that would be? You know how they would love to say that. They can't because they can't afford it. They're a business. It just is I hate people's opinions on this kind of stuff because they just have no idea what they're talking about. Pokemon would love to give us $1 million for everyone who wins a major tournament throughout the year. They would love to do. That'd be sick. They would. That would be huge publicity for them. Way more people would want to play the Pokemon TCG. But it's not reasonable for their business model and what they're trying to do and all that stuff. So they gave us they doubled our prize pool plus last season. It's a step in the right direction. I think a couple years from now, if they don't increase it again, I think it'd be fair for us to knock on their door again. But right now, I think things are in a pretty good spot with that. Nothing worth complaining about. And yeah, definitely people should understand Pokemon would love to be giving as much money as they possibly could to the prize money because it's only good publicity, PR for them to be able to sell their tournaments.
So I think the gravity of this change that we're about to talk about has gotten lost in the discussion of moving from from the championship point threshold to top X. But I think this is the biggest change heading into the next season. And that is the adjustment of how the Swiss tournament format is going to work. It is going to be very similar to
what you skipped over Travel. Oh, okay, yeah. Well, the first.
Travel awards.
Yeah, I guess one thing we can mention real fast
Sure.
is travel awards are still here. Travel awards and stipends. For anyone who doesn't know how they work, between ICs, so between EUIC and NAIC, if you're in like top X amount of players, if you're in like the top 4 in US and Canada, or no, it's a top 4 in every region. If you're top 4 in any region,
yes.
you get a 3.5K travel award to out of region. The next out of region IC, or if it's in region, you get 2K. So the next IC coming up is LAIC. So anyone who's in top 4 of their region for LAIC will either get a 3.5 or a 2K travel award if you're in top 4. And if you're in top 16, you get a 1K stipend. But on top of that, they've added priority registration to anyone who is 17th through 32nd, which is
this
another
is the
thing.
only way they're going to get Azul to go to locals is to get priority registration.
No, I'll be able to get priority registration just from going to majors, I think, for sure. I might be able to even like sneak away a stipend without going to locals. But
you did this year, right? Didn't
yeah,
you get one?
I got one stipend this year. But this is like, I don't know, there's no better word to put on it besides like, I guess, like top player privilege. I want to see more of this, just like I want to see more auto invites. This is a step in the right direction, but it's like literally the bare minimum. So now 17th through 32nd in the region will receive priority registration for that next upcoming IC. So like I said, between EUIC up until the end of NAIC, after EUIC to the end of NAIC, if you're in the top X of one of these brackets in your region, you get that stipend or travel award or priority registration for LAIC, which will be the first IC going into the new season. And then that repeats between NAIC to the end of LAIC, so on and so forth. So it is a step in the right direction. More top player privilege. I can't think of a better word. I would use a better term if I could, but I can't think of one. But that's the term people like to use to like kind of disagree with that. I want to see more of that, but this is like, just like the auto invites, it's like the bare minimum they could have done to like progress towards having more of that. So it's a step in the right direction. But yeah, go ahead. Let's talk about Swiss.
Yeah, so biggest change, I think, for sure, is the adjustment of the Swiss tournament format. It's going to be similar to what they're doing at Worlds this year. We did talk about this a few episodes ago. So if you missed our Worlds episode, be sure to check that out. But basically, there's going to be less rounds overall in tournaments moving forward, which is going to be really interesting to see. So the biggest numbers I think we should focus on are like pretty much just 249 and up, right? It is really interesting that. So, are you showing this here? I can't see your screen or anything.
Yeah.
So, 249 to 4096 will be 13 total Swiss rounds, and if there's over 4,097 players, there'll be 14 Swiss rounds. Why the heck are they planning for 4,097? Hold on. Does that mean something?
Now, I was complaining last year. I was like, "Can you just tell us when the next part is?" They told us. I'm glad they put this here because you remember me complaining last season. I'm like, when does the next round happen? Like, I just want to know when it is.
Yeah.
It's at 4,000 players. Well, we know, and that's fine with me.
Are we gonna achieve 4,000 players at anything?
NAIC or EUIC is definitely possible. Are we ever gonna break 8,192? Hopefully one day. But we know now that we know, it's just nice to know, to be honest. It's just nice that they're giving it there. It's like being transparent with like letting us know everything. Yeah, EUR NAIC would be the only, I guess probably only NAIC is the only possible tournament that could break 4K. But even then, I don't think we're there quite yet. But one day, I think we could definitely break 4K at NAIC one day.
So if I don't think that any North American regionals will be under 2,048 players. I suppose it is possible some of these West Coast ones, especially. I think one thing that'll be interesting with the change is how does it affect I think regional attendance is something that could take a hit with the 125 thing, possibly, especially later in the year. If people find themselves way too far outside, it's like, why am I even going to bother going to X tournament? That is something I think could be a possibility. I would say more than likely it won't be a super noticeable difference. But most of the tournaments, I think we're going to see the ICs and regionals will fit into the 2049 to 4096 mark, which will be 13 total Swiss rounds, 9 of which will be played on day 1, no change there, and then 4 of which will be played on day 2, and the other, so that means there's 2 less Swiss rounds than what we're currently having in this season. And then also the day 2 match point threshold is changing from 19 match points to 21 match points, meaning you have to go at least 7-2 or 6-0-3 to make it into day 2 for that 2049 to 4096 number of participants range.
I think we'll have a decent amount of regionals, well, especially outside of U.S. and Canada. There'll be a decent amount of majors under 20. I think there'll be a decent amount. I don't know. One of the things is like how big of venues are they getting? That'll be a question as well, right? Like, are they actually giving us space to hit these numbers? But even then, how many did we have that were over 2K last season? Not that many.
Well, yeah, but you should look at the back end, right? Because the game continued to grow, more and more people were going, right?
Yeah, and I don't think, like, to just like get my thoughts out there on that right now because you brought it up. Like, I don't think attendance is going to get hit that hard. I think by the time the season starts, a lot of players' mentality around the game is going to adjust. They're going to realize they still love Pokemon, they still want to play Pokemon, they still want to compete in it, and they'll understand that if they are going to end up at the World's Invite, they're going to need to go deep in one of these majors that they're going to attend, and they're going to tie their competitive drive to trying to do not trying to get the World's Invite this season. They're going to try and do the best they can at every major they go to. And then other people I think are just going to continue to play the game because they just love playing Pokemon. Like 80% plus of players, 80% plus of people who play the Pokemon TCG don't care about getting their World's Invite. So that's still 80% plus of the people who show up to these majors, right? Like, yeah. I don't think there's more than 20%
it might be
of
90%.
players. Yeah, there's like not more than 10-20% of players who actually care about getting the World's Invite. So I don't think Pokemon's going anywhere in numbers. And people are saying this is going to like kill the game. It's not. Nothing's changing. The only thing that's going to change is some people might quit the game because they're just the change is like something that they dislike that much. But most people are just the mentality around the game is just going to shift and change, and people are going to realize that Pokemon is still a really great community, really great game, and the bar for the World's Invite has shifted. And if it's something you still want to go after, you should go for it. And I don't think it's going to be as obtainable as people think it is in comparison to what you still had to achieve last season. You just need to become a better player and get some better placement at some of these major tournaments. But yeah, less rounds overall, and the bar for day 2 was set different. So this is going to like help with efficiency of tournaments though on their end. Overall, I don't like it as a competitor because the more rounds, the better. It's the same reason that best out of 3 is that much better than best of 1. The better player is going to win that much more often.
More games decreases variance.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you're going to have to messing up is going to be punished that much harder though, like overall, and like your expected outcome at majors throughout the year. So it'll be interesting. Definitely a shakeup. Overall, I'm hoping we hit the 2049 number, so we actually get that 9 rounds day 1, and then you still only have the 4 rounds day 2, but they did make up for it a little bit here. They did add, we are getting asymmetrical cut for the world champion. Wait, did they say we're getting asymmetrical cut for the world championships?
I don't think so.
Yeah, then why are they all of a sudden they are introducing asymmetrical cut for major tournaments next year though? Why would they not do it for Worlds but then do it for next season?
Yeah, I wonder if that is meant to be a part of the world structure.
Did we miss that? Is it say I can like look it up right now?
I don't think it was announced. I think we would have definitely talked about that. But for those who don't know what asymmetrical cut is, basically everyone who has the same amount of match points as the person in 8th seed gets to play into top cut. So like it basically eliminates the potential of a bubble, which is what we've talked about in the past. You know, some people, when we're having, people having to get to these regionals, top 8s that are needing 36 match points. There was people who were bubbling out at 36 match points at 9th place or 10th place at the tournament. Yeah. So now those people will still have an opportunity to play for the title.
Yeah, I'm looking it up here. I don't see anything about asymmetrical cut. I'm just going to assume it's going to happen because it'd be really weird to not have it at Worlds, but then have it in every...
But it has not been announced or anything.
Yeah.
I know nothing about that.
Yeah, I don't see it. That's weird. Yeah, so asymmetrical cut, there is some like drawbacks to it. I think overall losing tournaments rounds though overall, like if it was like if we were keeping like 6 rounds day 2, like 9 rounds day 1, 6 rounds day 2, there would be a better argument to not have asymmetrical cut. But because we are losing those 2 rounds in day 2, I think you should almost be playing when you head into cut with the idea of it effectively being a top 16 for the most part. But one thing cool about asymmetrical cut, which is something I've been wanting to see introduced to the game for a while, is a reason to play for first seed. Because basically in the Pokemon TCG, if you get first seed going into top 8, there's no real advantage for being the first seed. Like first seed versus 8th seed, the 8th seed probably isn't like a worse player, right? Or their deck isn't worse because they got 8th seed and you got first seed at a major tournament. So there's really no advantage. But now with asymmetrical cut, if there is more players who have the same record as 8th seed, if you have a higher seed, 1st seed, 2nd seed, 3rd seed, it's possible or more likely you won't have to play that initial round of top cut.
Like a play-in round, effectively.
Yeah. So I think although there is like that potential negative, I think the way to just kind of think about it is we're basically playing for a top 16 for some of the seeds. So getting that extra those more points, the higher seed is something you should be playing towards to avoid being one of the lower seeds, 8, 7, 6. And you don't have to actually play in that kind of like play-in round.
I think one of the questions here would be, why would they do this over just giving us top 16, right? Or a top 32 single elimination bracket, something like that. And I think there could have been an argument to do one of those things, to be honest. But I don't hate, because like if you extend out to top 16, then there's going to be people who bubble out of top 16. If you extend out to top 32, then they're going to be taking people who bubble out of top 32. Doing asymmetrical cut, it adds a little more variable. You don't know exactly how many play-in rounds or playing games you're going to have, but it ensures that like there's a going into the last round of a tournament, players are kind of going to kind of know this is what I need to try to achieve. You know how needing to win this round to still have to still be in top cut the play-in round, right?
Also, it adds that value of being the higher seed, right? Which is nice. So it's kind of like a plus. Is like which is something I think everybody. Like if you're a competitor, it's something everyone should want. Is like the higher seed should somehow have a benefit. To like put it to give you like an example in Magic, the higher seed going into cut gets to pick if they go first or second in the first game of the match. So I would like to see that introduced still personally, and then it would kind of soften the blow of the people who are forced to do that play-in round because of asymmetrical cut. So if you are 8th seed or 7th seed, and then where it could get kind of wonky is like if all the way down to 15th seed, they all have the same amount of match points as 8th seed, then even the 2nd seed has to do the play-in round. So that's what I'm saying. I think players should definitely view, when you play towards top cut, if you're going to come in on that lower end of things, you definitely should think about it and view it as, okay, we're like playing as if it's like almost a top 16. We're like going to be playing towards trying to get into top 16 more so than anything. And the way people like play out those last couple rounds /ID, we could have some pretty big asymmetrical cuts potentially as well, depending on how things actually work out. And I don't know, because we haven't had the system ever. I haven't really paid too much attention to like other tournaments, card games or whatever that use this system, the asymmetrical cut. So I'm definitely going to be interested to see how it plays out. And we're not too far away from like the first major of the year, so we're going to know pretty soon. So overall, I think I'm a fan of asymmetrical cut over top 16. And I think I'm a fan of it over probably just having +1 round in day 2 as well. I think it's probably a plus. There are flaws to every system, but I think overall it's got more pros than cons. For me, the biggest thing is that higher seed getting an advantage. You want to move on to the announcements for the first couple majors?
Yeah, so they did release the schedule for these upcoming tournaments. And for the most part, globally, tournaments are not on the same weekend. With one exception thus far, there is a tournament in Brazil and a tournament in Brazil and Germany on the same weekend. But other than that, all of these tournaments are on different weekends throughout the world. So I think we're going to see some people going to a lot of tournaments outside of their home region.
Yeah, definitely.
Yourself potentially included, right, buddy?
Yeah, there's nothing been announced for Oceania yet, but they always get a late announcement. And actually, their majors are usually ones that line up with other majors. So I wouldn't be surprised to see when the Oceania or the Australian regionals get announced that they do line up with some of these other major tournaments possibly, or ones in next year. This is only announcements up till the end of the year. This ends on December 15th. They're probably not putting any major tournaments on the weekend after that, which would be I guess right around Christmas, right? So they're probably not putting any major tournaments on Christmas week. And then the next week after that is New Year's. So there's probably not going to be anything else in December. They probably just gave us up till the end of the year on these announcements. And I think this does confirm, unfortunately, for Latin America, because there is Germany and a regional in Brazil on the same weekend, that the Latin American tournaments are probably not being streamed by TPCI next season. I think that basically confirms that, the fact that those two conflict, which is something I think I want to see happen eventually, is the Latin American majors being getting the same kind of production and stream quality from TPCI that TPCI has now done over with the European events. I think that's like one of the next steps in them kind of globalizing the whole competition. So we don't have that. But the first major of the year is going to be in Baltimore on September 15th, 13th to 15th. I'm hoping we're in the same convention center. I'm hoping they don't put us in the basement again, though. It was so hot down there. Please.
It was in a basement.
That's why I didn't want to go back to Baltimore. They put us in the, what do we call it? The bunker. They put us in the bunker, and yeah, not a super great experience down there. So hopefully they put us in a different room, and hopefully they give us enough space to break that 249 number, so we can actually have 9 rounds day one. That'd be good as well.
Yeah. And then the next North American tournament is a new one, a location we've never had a major before, Louisville, Kentucky.
Haven't we been to Louisville for something or no?
I don't think so. Not that I know. We've been to Tennessee for Worlds.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'm trolling. I've definitely
kind of similar.
I've been there for League Cups before. I'm almost positive. But I thought for some reason we had a major there at some point. I don't know why I thought that.
Not that I remember. I could be wrong.
One big thing.
Louisville and Lexington are the big cities in Kentucky.
Yeah, and then after that,
we got to Kentucky States or something one year.
No, I never went to any states outside of the New England area when state championships exist. After that, we got Lille in France, literally the weekend after Louisville, and then 2 weeks after that, Poland, Gdansk is happening, and one we skipped before that and would be after that. They're actually announcing the special events in Latin America earlier than they usually do. Usually they're kind of crammed in towards the end of the season in May. And this is something that Pablo pointed out, which I think is a really good thing to kind of point out here. They are announced earlier, fit in with the rest of the schedule of everything else, and they're actually being held in like actual venues and not just like at card shops. So the Latin American scene definitely has a lot more players that want to play the game than was able to play at majors last season. I think even Pablo mentioned that like one of the special events that happened towards the end of last year had like 150 players at it, but there was like 1,000 players who were like wanting to register or something.
Yeah. So, the Mexico City one, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So I think we're finally going to start to see the Latin American region show off how big it has actually grown and how many people actually want to play Pokemon going into the season. And like TPCI is finally giving them the opportunity to play Pokemon and to really show how big the community's gotten down there.
Yeah, and recognizing that as well with the change of the fact that the person who wins that tournament gets a World's invitation now, right? Which is not something that was happening last year. Yep. The first couple special events, there was the Lima, Peru in October, and then in November there is Buenos Aires, Argentina. Then we're going back to Sacramento in the U.S., location we've been to before. We've got Stuttgart in Germany at the end of November, beginning December, and then another special event, Bogota, Colombia, in the first weekend of December. And then after that, we're closing out the year of 2024 in Toronto, Canada, in December, baby. Toronto cold. In December. That's a decision right there.
Yeah, it's going to be a cold one for sure. But, I mean, no matter where we're going at that point, it's going to be a little bit cooler. I guess they could have put us in, like, Orlando in December. It's not that as cold there.
Why not, you know?
Yeah.
That's probably a great idea.
That would have been a little bit nicer. But I guess like people also want to go to Orlando like actually in the summertime or springtime as well, right?
Springtime, yeah.
Yeah.
Then we do have the ICs as well. We've got LAIC is going to be in November, middle of November there, 15th to 17th. EUIC in February, the 21st to 23rd. And then NAIC back in New Orleans. Oh, sorry. Those other two ICs are in the same locations as they have been in the past. Yep. LAIC in Sao Paulo, EUIC in London, and then NAIC is going back to New Orleans, which we did already know. And I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if this is just like the mainstay for these regionals for the coming years. I do kind of like the idea of going to new locations within these rating zones, right? Like when we got to go to Germany for EUIC, but I think there's also it's not like a bad thing that it's like a recurring location necessarily.
Yeah, hopefully we switch it up eventually. If we're there for like 2 to 3 years in a row, it's not terrible, but hopefully there's a switch up eventually. I honestly don't know anywhere like I'm not that familiar with Latin America overall, but I don't know where we'd go besides Sao Paulo, Brazil. Like what location would even make sense besides that?
Probably just other big cities in Brazil,
yeah,
like
I just
Rio.
Don't know. I don't know any of them. London, I think, is just convenient overall, especially for international travelers. Not as convenient as I thought for European travelers though, because the UK is like now like separate from Europe, right, to some extent. So I think you have to like get a visa if you want to go over there if you're outside of the UK.
Yeah, not a part of the EU anymore.
Yeah, Europeans can confirm. And I'm excited to go back to New Orleans, and it is in June again, which means we're probably gonna have that break again between NAIC and Worlds. And something that people did bring up is the time frame of EUIC is earlier. Do you think we're gonna get rotation lined up with Japan next year?
It is definitely possible, right? I mean, almost certainly we will be getting a set release that weekend, right? Or 2 weekends before.
Yeah.
Um,
Honestly, I would like to see 3 weekends before would be nice. That'd be a nice change to see it a little bit even earlier, but it'll probably be the 2 weekends. But yeah, UIC the last 2 years has lined up with rotation, right?
yes, it has.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a crazy thing to speculate for sure.
Yeah, I would love that. I would, because that means we're like, because Japan gets rotation at the end of January, so that means theoretically we'd be like a week or 2 weeks off from Japan's rotation, which would be so good. That'd be insane. That'd be so sick. That's what I am most excited for, to be honest, out of all these announcements. Once I saw someone say that on Twitter, because I've said this before, we get to play so much less Pokemon than Japan does because they get the set before us. They develop stuff before us. We don't get to play the development that they get to play through. So we actually just overall play less Pokemon, which sucks. That's a big L. So yeah, overall, I think a lot of exciting stuff, a lot of good changes. I think there is definitely some thoughts and critiques that can be thrown at the new invite structure. The now top X. Like I said, the one thing I just want to see from the community, and if it does involve us having to go to this system to kind of enforce that or push that, is like the change around the way people view the competition in the game and the Worlds invite. Overall, I think the mentality last year and seasons before that leading up to where we are now was definitely negative and toxic towards just kind of competition in general. So if we need this shakeup to change that, then I think maybe that has to be the way to go. I'm not saying I want it to be that way, but I don't see any other way that we're going to maybe push the community down like a more positive view around kind of competition and the Worlds invite in general. So, but yeah, what are your final thoughts on all the changes, Chip?
No, I mean, I think I'm overall excited as well. I understand that people are disappointed and less excited about the season than they would have been before. But like I said, my main point of view now is as a spectator, as a commentator, as a fan of the game more than anything. And I think there's just a lot of really cool potential and things to come from the season. I think as well, one last note I'll leave to players, and this kind of can go with really just about anything in life, right? Like, things are going to change. You're going to find yourself with new circumstances to try to navigate in life. And you can choose to, in a lot of things, either be defeated and let down by those things and let those things, like the things that change, demotivate you, or you can find motivation in them and try to seek to achieve better than you would have before. And I think there's plenty of people who are excited about the challenge and looking forward to the opportunity to compete for the top 125. And those are the people who I'm most excited to see competing at the World Championships.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the biggest thing or another thing I guess is hopefully TPCI just does not choke that championship point season reward program. No kidding. There's so many good things they can do with it. Like, please.
Hopefully they release some information about it sooner than later as well. Like, maybe they're waiting to release something about it at Worlds. That would be really cool. Is like a segue. Like, hey, we're competing here at Worlds. This is what you can play for this season, the Worlds invite, and then also, whatever cool things they have in store there. Right.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. All right. Well, I think that's gonna do it for this week's episode, Chip. Unless you guys got something else, go ahead and send us out.
Yeah, I don't think so. Thanks so much to everyone for listening and for the support as always. If you do enjoy, be sure to leave us a like, review, a rating, a comment. Be sure to subscribe here on the YouTube channel. Those things help us out a bunch and let us know you're enjoying the content that we're putting out here with the podcast. If you want to keep up to date with what is happening with us and with the podcast, the best place to do it is over on X. You can follow myself at Chip Ritchie, at Azul_GG, and you can also follow the podcast at Uncommon_Energy.
Yeah, appreciate the support as always. Catch y'all next week, Wednesday, 7 a.m. Eastern.